Have you ever walked into a room and noticed people straighten up? Or maybe you've been told, more than once, that you seemed unapproachable before someone actually got to know you. Or perhaps you've had a colleague go quiet mid-sentence, or a friend admit years later that they were actually a little scared of you when you first met. And you stood there genuinely confused, thinking, "Me? I'm not doing anything." That's exactly the thing. You're not doing anything. And that might be the whole point. Most people assume intimidation is something loud. It's the aggressive boss who slams tables, the person who raises their voice, the one who openly dominates a room. But psychology tells a very different story. The most quietly intimidating people rarely try to be. In fact, they're often the last ones to know it's happening. Their presence alone, the way they think, the way they hold themselves, the way they refuse to pretend, creates a kind of invisible pressure in the room. And most of the time, they're standing there completely unaware, wondering why people seem distant or guarded or oddly formal around them. So today, let's look at the 7 signs you might be intimidating people, completely without realizing it. And more importantly, let's understand why it happens, what it says about you, and what it doesn't mean. The first sign is that people edit themselves around you. You've probably felt this. A group is talking, laughing freely, and the moment you enter, something shifts. Voices drop a register. Someone backtracks on what they just said. The energy changes, not because you've done anything, but simply because you've arrived. And here's the psychology behind it. People tend to self-edit most around those they perceive as highly intelligent, deeply observant, or unusually standards-driven. Research on social impression management shows that people unconsciously monitor their speech and behavior more carefully around individuals they perceive as evaluative, meaning those who seem like they notice things, weigh things, and form precise opinions. If you're someone who listens carefully, speaks deliberately, and rarely fills silence with noise, other people read that as evaluation. They don't know you're just being yourself. They assume you're keeping score. The second sign is that you're comfortable with silence in a way that makes others deeply uncomfortable. This one is more subtle, but powerful. Most people treat silence as a problem to be solved. An awkward pause in a conversation feels unbearable, so they rush to fill it. With jokes, with filler words, with anything. But if you're someone who sits comfortably in silence, who doesn't feel the urgent need to perform or fill every gap, other people experience that stillness as almost confrontational. They don't know what you're thinking. And not knowing what someone is thinking, especially someone who seems self-possessed, creates a mild but real form of social anxiety. Psychologists call this ambiguity aversion, the discomfort humans feel when they can't read a situation clearly. Your silence isn't hostility, but to someone who needs social feedback to feel safe, your quiet presence can read like a wall they don't know how to climb. The third sign is that you have very high standards, and you don't hide it. Now, this doesn't mean you're harsh or critical out loud. In fact, it often means the opposite. You just naturally hold yourself to a high bar. You care about quality, honesty, and doing things properly. And here's what happens. People around you sense that bar even when you never say a word about it. They pick it up from the way you work, the way you speak, the care you bring to small things. And unconsciously, they start applying that bar to themselves in your presence and finding themselves wanting. Social comparison theory, developed by psychologist Leon Festinger, tells us that humans constantly measure themselves against the people around them. When the person next to you has a visible standard of excellence, it naturally activates self-comparison. And for some people, that comparison is uncomfortable enough that they'd rather keep their distance than risk being found lacking. The fourth sign is that you don't seek validation, and people notice. Think about how often social interactions are built around mutual affirmation. You say something. I agree enthusiastically. I share something. You validate it warmly. It's the invisible currency of most conversations. But if you're someone who forms your own opinions, sticks to them under social pressure, and doesn't chase agreement, You break that unspoken contract, and it unsettles people more than you'd expect. There's a term in behavioral psychology called autonomy signaling, the behavior of people who visibly operate from internal rather than external approval. When others sense that you don't need their validation, they can't fully predict your behavior. They can't win you over easily. They can't place you. And a person who can't be easily placed often gets coded, wrongly, as cold or unapproachable, when really, you're just complete in a way they find unfamiliar. The fifth sign is that your honesty doesn't come with a cushion. You're not mean. You're not trying to be difficult. But when you say something, you mean it. And you don't automatically soften every truth to make it more palatable. Where other people might say, "That's interesting," when they think something is wrong, you're the one who says, gently but directly, "I don't think that's quite right." And while that honesty is genuinely valuable, while it makes you someone people can actually trust, it also means people brace themselves slightly in your company. They're not sure whether what they say will be met with easy agreement or quiet challenge. And that bracing, that anticipation, that is the definition of feeling intimidated, even by someone who means no harm. There's research from organizational psychology suggesting that people with high assertiveness and low social masking, meaning they say what they think without performing excessive agreeableness, are consistently rated as more intimidating by peers, regardless of their actual emotional warmth. The sixth sign is that you have a strong sense of purpose, and people feel the weight of that direction. There's something quietly commanding about a person who knows what they want, not in an aggressive way, just in a way that's settled, like they've already decided the important things and don't need to debate them. When you're around someone like that, you can feel it. It's like sitting next to a compass. And for people who are still figuring things out, still unsure of their direction, still easily swayed by opinion, that certainty can feel imposing, not because you're pushing it on anyone, but because certainty is rare, and rarity is its own kind of weight. You remind people, simply by existing, of the questions they haven't yet answered in themselves, and that reminder is sometimes easier to avoid than to sit with. The seventh sign is that your emotional control reads as distance. You don't easily get flustered. You don't overreact. In a meeting where everyone else is visibly anxious, you're calm. In an argument where someone expects you to buckle, you stay measured. And while you know you're not cold, while you know you feel things deeply, just privately, the outside world reads your regulated exterior as detachment. Neuroscience research on emotional regulation shows that people with high self-regulatory capacity, those who are skilled at managing their emotional responses, are often perceived as more powerful and more distant simultaneously. That calm isn't absence of feeling, it's the quiet mastery of it. But from the outside, it can look like you don't care. And caring, or the visible performance of it, is something people use to gauge whether they're safe with you. When they can't see your vulnerability clearly, they fill the gap with assumptions. And here's what I want you to take from all of this. None of these signs are flaws. Not a single one. The editing, the silence, the standards, the self-assurance, the honesty, the purpose, the composure. These are the marks of someone who has developed depth, someone who has put in the internal work. The world doesn't always know what to do with that kind of person, especially on first encounter. It needs time to calibrate. What you might call too intimidating, history tends to call a serious person. And serious people, the kind who actually change things, the kind who build things, the kind who tell the truth when it's easier to smile and nod, have always made the room shift slightly when they walked in, not because they were trying to, but because presence, real presence, is felt. So the next time someone seems a little guarded around you, or tells you they found you unapproachable at first, maybe smile and take it for what it is. Not an insult, but a slightly clumsy compliment. It means they sensed something before they could name it. If any of these signs felt uncomfortably familiar, drop it in the comments. I genuinely love to know which one landed. And if you've been on the other side of this, if you've ever been the one quietly intimidated by someone's presence, tell me that too. Because sometimes the most useful thing we can do is simply recognize what we're actually responding to